Okay, the stream is live. Let's see if I can get headphones on. We're pre-show right now. If you're watching this on the replay, you can jump ahead about 15 minutes when we'll actually begin the show. In the meantime, you can enjoy watching the back of my head. We'll flip around and look at some other cameras in just a bit. I'll make sure everything's running the way it should. All right, I can hear things now. Hopefully you folks can as well. Type some things in here. All right, some cameras. There's a camera. There's a camera. There is a graphic. There's camera. There's camera. And where did I put? Yeah, I put that there. Okay. That works. So things are alive. Let's see how things sound if I was to listen to myself to see how the audio would sound on the stream, because that's going to be important as well. Cameras. There's a camera. There's a camera. Well, it sounds fine. I'll take it. The dial-in line will not be active. The call-in line for the studio won't be active until about an hour into the show. So you'll see the phone number popping up occasionally. Where did I put that? Now I have to figure out. I put that in there. That's where I put that. So that studio line is currently not up and running. Although if you call that and the show is over, you can always leave a message there. So if you have questions after the show is over and you just want to maybe leave a message, we can always play it in the next show. You can do that as well. Right now, you'll get the prompt to leave a voicemail, which I obviously won't hear until afterwards. About an hour into the main part of the show, we'll do the after show, and I'll turn on the phone lines so that people can call in. And we'll be starting this in about 12 minutes or so. If you don't have the Socrative plug-in or Socrative on a separate window, or let me see if I can bring up the slide so that folks can prepare. What camera is that? It's that one right there. So if you are going to join us today and follow along and answer questions with everyone else and see how you do compared to everyone else, you'll be able to load up the Socrative app and do that. I will not be showing your specific answer. I just show a conglomeration of everybody. Just the overall who got what question, who answered that, etc., etc., etc. All right. So all those things seem to work. Hello, chat room. Thanks for hanging out with me this morning before we went live. There are a lot of questions already today. A lot of questions you just can't answer in a chat. Just need to go live. We're going to see if my voice is going to hold out today. I might take another magic pill. Oh, down to the last one of these. This episode of the study group brought to you by Vocal Zone. Studio's come along nicely. We've moved in pretty well. Got a lot kind of set up. There are some things that will be different, hopefully next month or the month after. All of my lighting is currently on stands that are behind me and in front of me. And I'm going to have those all hanging from the ceiling soon. So it will be nice to have that. Going to cover drivers. I don't think there is a... Is there a question that talks about drivers? Sort of. There are some that discuss it in a tertiary sort of fashion. but nothing that talks specifically about them. Not this time. Although you're more than welcome to ask in the after show. We can always do that as well. Like, what's up with these drivers? You have to have Socrative if you plan on answering questions along with everyone else and having those answers viewed online. Otherwise, you can answer them just yourself. You have the satisfaction of knowing you answered the question. Florida, very, very similar, Steve. It's icy cold. The snow has been awful. I don't even know what that means. I don't even know what digging cars out of snow means. I probably have a picture of what's going on out here. Let's see if I do. I'm sure I have a shot of, no, be outside. I'm in the woods, so the backyard is, you can sort of see it in that shot. Let's see if you can see it in this shot. There we go. So there's outside right now. So no snow, alas. No birds either. Where's all the birds? That's what I got this camera for, so I can see the birds that are out there, among other things. Uh-oh. Looks like there was a raccoon during the night or something. There is on the ground something. Well, we're gonna have to investigate that. There's some work that needs to be done there. So let's see if we can find out what happened. What time is it? I got a show to do at some point today. Let's see if I can find what may have happened during the evening. Oh, there's a lot of stuff that happened on this camera. No, it's the wrong camera. Oh, good. I guess that's good. Let's see what we can do. Okay. I'm going to try to find out. No, that's the wrong camera too. What? I'm getting there, folks. Now you get to just look at me for some bizarre reason. Maybe I won't be able to find out what creature got up there during the evening and took down the entire thing. Oh, maybe we will. All right, it's gone there. It's gone there. Did it happen? No, it's still there. It's hard to tell. Flipping through my... Okay, then it's gone. Aha. So what got my camera? Funny you would ask. Or what got my bird feeder? There it was. I just had it. There we go. That's what got the bird feeder. That guy. How you like that? At 4:20 in the morning. Uh-huh. Delicious. I wonder how, let's see, he must have started. So it's still there at 4:03. And then by 4:20, he had gotten it down. I would have to go back, and it's not easy to rewind through this particular, can I? No, not through this particular software, but that's what happened. Cause at 4:03, it's right there. By 4:20, not so much. Oh, that's fantastic. Delicious. By 5:12, he's long gone. So that's what happened there. Let's speed it up and let's see how long he stuck around. Okay, 4 minutes to the show, everyone. Delicious. Look at him eating it. He is having a blast. Just munching. Oh, well. And that solves that particular mystery. Now I have to, let's pause this. I have to now take a screenshot of this and send it to the Mrs. Professor Messer so she can really appreciate what happened to that. Cha-chink. Let's see. Okay, we can close this out because we have like work to do now. There's real things going on in 3 minutes. Let me bring up my messages. Oh, well, that noise. Don't have the mic on. You can't hear anything. No, I don't think I've got the buffer running to send the, let's do it right now. My live A+ study group starts right now. And share now. Like a minute to go. Hopefully I got the link right. I should probably change it on my website as well. Since we're doing that, and since I don't have anything that forces me to start at the super top of the hour, there's no pressure. Although I think we'll start pretty much at the top of the hour. I don't think that'll be an issue. If I can get these pastels out of my mouth. If I can type and change the link from calendar to live. Save that. Empty the caches. The cache. Okay, let's do a study group, y'all. We're talking Southern. That was kind of a fun pre-show, wasn't it? Let's, I have two numbers here. All right, start a recording. Recordings are good. And let's start a show. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the January 2015 already Professor Messer Live A+ Study Group. Thanks for joining us. I'll be your host, James Messer, through this hour of Q&A, where I will ask you questions and everybody around the world will answer the questions, and we'll be able to see you doing this all at the same time. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's a lot of interesting questions I've got ready for you. A lot of these have come directly from you, so I appreciate everyone sending me in those questions throughout the week, the month. I get a lot of interesting questions, and I try to make questions or Q&A out of them, and I throw them back to you. This is something I like to do every month. We've got, gosh, a lot of different ideas and things that we're doing. What I'll usually do is we'll do this Q&A in the first hour, and the second hour I open up the phone lines. If you call the phone lines now, you'll just get a voicemail message. I'll let you know when the phone lines are open, and you can call in at 855-785-RJ45. If you'd like to follow everything that we're doing here, you can always watch us on YouTube and see what's going on there. In fact, subscribing to YouTube is one of the best things you can do for following what we're doing here. We're up to 95,000 subscribers on YouTube. It's just been phenomenal. Thank you so much for your support. I do send out a daily pop quiz Monday through Friday. You'll be able to see that pop quiz if you subscribe on Twitter. You might be able to see the pop quiz if you subscribe on or follow me on Facebook, but Facebook doesn't show the pop quiz to everyone every day. So one of the best ways to do that is to follow on Twitter, and sometimes to put other notices and things in there as well. There's also vouchers. I know that in the U.S. anyway, the list of vouchers has expired. We're waiting on new vouchers, voucher code for that one. But if you're in the United States right now, the voucher code should work without a problem at all. If you are in the chat room, you'll be able to go to ProfessorMesser.com and see all the chats that are going on right now. You can also visit the website throughout the week, the months, 24/7. The chat room is always there and doing other things. So there's plenty to do there. If you want to watch live, it is ProfessorMesser.com/live. If you're watching this on the YouTube feed, for instance, you won't be able to see that. Now, if you are watching and you already have your A+ certification, one of the things that you can do is to get continuing education credits. I recommend you go out to the CompTIA website and look for all of those to be able to see that as well. There's a number of you that are also studying for the very first time for this course, and you've purchased the course. That also helps what we're doing here. You watch it for absolutely free online, but if you want an offline version, there's a version of that as well that includes MP3 audio. It has all of my slides in PDF format. I have transcriptions, and we've put it together in sort of this format. Here it is. There's the course. I used to provide the course in CD-ROM format, DVD-ROM format, but now we just do everything flash drives. So you'll get a nice flash drive. It's got everything on there. And when you're done with the course or you've copied everything off, now you've got a flash drive you can use. This is one of the easiest ways to take this with you. So if you're not online all the time or you just don't have the bandwidth, that's a great way to do that. You can find out more about that at ProfessorMesser.com/downloadable-A+. Now, I mentioned that you'll be able to follow along with what we're doing here. And you do that by joining or going to the Socrative website. Just pop open a new window there on your screen or a new tab and go over to Socrative. I have questions there. In fact, if you're there already, you'll be able to see one that I'm about to put up. Another thing that I do is you can have this on an app. If you want to download the Socrative student app from Google Play, from the apps, the Apple App Store, or from the Windows Store, you can do it on your mobile device as well. In fact, if you're there right now, you're going to see the first question come up. So there is a nice way to be able to see those things as they're happening. Make sure you can see them. When you get to the point, it will ask you to enter your name. So you'll see something like this, and we'll enter my name, which is going to be unusual when I look at this later, and you'll see a message pop up, a screen pop up like this. So that's kind of nice. You're able to get that information and see what's going on. There is a number of things that we're going to be doing, and that's why I have this here, because I'm going to be asking you questions today, questions that look a lot like this. How long have you been studying for your A+ certification? You go to Socrative.com, go to the room name Professor Messer, and that's what you see, either on your mobile device or on your device that you've got in front of you. If you're running a laptop or a tablet and you've got another screen available, that's a good way to do it, just by going to the website. And when you go there, I'll pop up on my side what I see. I see interactively this view. So as you are voting on particular things, I see interactively on my screen exactly what's going on. So we'll get to test you to see just how much you know about these A+ topics. Should be interesting to always do that. Well, this is a good example of this, of course, because when we have people watching this, some people are just starting their A+ certification path. In fact, it's January, so a lot of the schools have started a new semester, and that new semester means that a lot of people are trying to work on their A+ certification over the next number of months. So 27% of you so far say less than 3 months you've been doing this. You've got some folks that say, I already have my A+ certification, which is great. You'll be able to get a continuing education unit by watching this today. And later on in the presentation, I'll give you a code word that you can email to me, and I will send you back an email, Socrative email update that says, you were here, you were there at the Socrative Q&A, you watched the hour-long study group, and here's your digital certification that you indeed watched this. So a little something to work on today. I think it's a good way to go about and work on those things. So I've got questions for you. You've been working on these things all month. You've been sending me these messages, and it's about the A+ certification. For those of you just getting into A+, of course, you have to pass 2 exams to get your certification. And these 2 exams, one of them is the 220-801 and one of them is the 220-802. Those are the 2 current exams. A number of the questions this week said, are these the latest ones? Yes. These exams have been out almost 3 years now. Usually we expect CompTIA to update the exams somewhere around that 3-year time frame. And CompTIA stated on Facebook that, yeah, probably later on in the year, late summer, early fall, you may see a new version of the A+. But of course, even if they introduce a new version, you've still got a long time. There's an overlap where you could take either one of the exams. So there's nothing you have to worry about to be able to work on that piece. And a lot of different topics to look at as well. So we're going to go through hardware and networking and dealing with the BIOS and working with hard drive arrays and a lot of other things today. And I've got all these questions ready to go for you. So let's do one. Let's start with the first question. We're going to start with one that I think a lot of people really don't like dealing with, which is there's a huge section on the 801 exam where you are expected to know what the speeds and of different interfaces are and what the lengths of some of these cables can be, the maximum length of some of those. So you'll be able to see all of that when you start working with these. In fact, the question I have for you is, okay, if you're dealing with SATA, version 3.0, which of these throughputs would you most likely associate with that? And your options are right here. It can be 100 megabits per second, 1.5 gigabits per second, 6.0 gigabits per second, 10 gigabits per second, or 100 gigabits per second. It's one of those. We know we've got those options available. If you go out, again, no answering in the chat room. I guess I haven't said it right now. So for the first time, no answering in the chat room. This is one of those things where we want everybody to answer independently. So go out to the website or answer that. Only one of these happens to be the correct answer. I know the Socrative front end allows you to choose multiple answers, but in this case, we're only looking for one, and that's the one that will match the most likely associated throughput for SATA revision 3.0. And that's one that you will need to know for your 801 exam. 801 goes into a lot of hardware, goes into a lot of interfaces, deals a lot with configuring and plugging in different interfaces into your computer. So if we go and look at how we've done with this, this is how this works. So now we get to see what did everybody answer on this one. And we've got a bell curve. We got one right in the middle. I think practically, let's see, 60% of you have chosen C. But is that really the question? I think for those of you that have watched this before, you know that occasionally we'll have a question that everybody jumps on an answer and it turns out it's something completely different. But is the case this time that everybody's right? We go with the large population. A number of you did say 100 megabits per second, 9%, 14% said 1.5 gigabits per second, 11% 10 gig, and 7% said 100 gigabits per second. So we're really not quite sure what that one what it might be. So let's have a look at SATA and the different revisions. This are important to know for the exam, because if you're given a configuration for a computer, and this computer has SATA version 2 and this one has SATA version 3, you may want to know what the substantial differences are between those. Would you really see an increase in speed or not between those two? Just because it's a newer version doesn't necessarily mean that it might be better or worse. So let's look at the different revisions for SATA. There were the first SATA version that came out, I guess publicly, the one that was introduced initially, is something called SATA version 1.0. And this SATA version 1.0 had a maximum throughput, at least on the communication between the motherboard and the controller, the hard drive, of 1.5 gigabits per second. And you had about a meter of a maximum distance inside of your device where you could really use that and work with it. There is also a later version of SATA that was released, and the speeds increased by 100%. We doubled the speed of SATA in version 2.0 to 3 gigabits per second. And again, that 1 meter distance tends to apply. You can't go too far with these serial connections. It's a very high speed connection, and you don't have a cabling system inside of your computer that really allows you to extend that out very far. So the basic rule of thumb is to go about a meter in distance to be able to maintain those types of speeds. Now we also have, and the question that we just had is SATA version 3.0. That tends to be the latest revision of SATA you would see on most devices these days. This will double again over the revision 2.0, which means you're at a maximum of 6 gigabits per second. And again, you've got that 1 meter inside of your device. Now, there are different communication methods that you might see in different systems. You may see a system that runs SATA revision 2.0. You can generally have a backwards compatibility. So if you have a drive that can only go at SATA revision 1.0 speeds, you can still plug that into a SATA revision 2.0 or even 3.0 interface, but you're still only going to get the speeds that you would commonly get for a SATA 1.0 device. So that's another thing to look at. If you've got a SATA revision 3 interface and you're connecting in and you're only plugging in a SATA SATA revision 1 device, well, that doesn't help you. You're not really taking advantage of the speed of your motherboard and being able to do that. Really useful to have those things there. So the folks that answered that one there with the 6 gigabits per second for SATA, you're absolutely correct. You got that one right. We can go with everybody who said that. We can go with our major population in the room. You got that one right. So that's one of those things. Remember, if you're following this online, you'll be able to answer these questions as well. Go to Socrative.com and go to the room Professor Messer. All one word there. So let's now try another question. I got plenty of questions here for us today. We're going pretty well. Our time frames are pretty good, so let's do another one. We're going to switch now over to networking. I guess we're staying with the 220-801 exam at the moment, and we're going to ask a networking question. Now, one of the things that a lot of people will ask throughout the month is they'll get into the chat on the website, and they'll ask questions about subnet masking, and they'll want to get into a lot of details about subnetting. And when we start going through the details and we start asking, one of the questions I ask is, which exam are you taking? And they say, I'm taking the A+. Well, fortunately on the A+, you don't have to know a lot of intricacies on how to do the subnetting calculations. But there are some standards with subnetting that you do need to memorize and have available for your exam. So that is one that is really useful to know, because later on when you go into networking, you'll have all of this information behind you. But you don't have to worry about doing the actual subnetting calculations and trying to figure out how many devices on a subnet. The A+ doesn't tend to go into that level of detail. But they do ask questions like this. So which of these would be the decimal equivalent of a /16 subnet mask? And I have some options available for you. Here they are. Is it 255.0.0.0? Is it 255.255.0.0? Is it 255.255.240.0? Is it 255.255.255.0? Or is it 255.255.16.0? So it's got to be one of those to be able to work with these. This is one where when you're getting in doing anything with IT, you're going to touch the network. There's just no way around it. One of the things when I start working with this, and you'll notice, by the way, when I was doing this, I must have hit an underline button. One of these looks like it's underlined. Didn't really hit the underline for any particular reason. That question may be right or may be wrong. I don't know why I didn't catch that in that. But if you're watching, you'll see that that is the question. So most of you are answering a couple of different things. We've got actually most of you answered 255, 255.00 for the question of which of these would be the decimal equivalent of a /16 subnet mask. Some of you did go with the one that was underlined. I may have fooled a few people by doing that. It was not my intention. Yeah, it was a lot of 255s to talk about in there. 255, 255, 240, 255, 250. It's a lot. You can't, it's hard to do. The 255, 255, 240.0 or the 16.0, those didn't seem to get a lot of people, or the 255.000 didn't get a lot. So you're in this situation now where you have to understand why you're seeing this /16 on an address. So let's break this out. What does that /16 mean? And the real challenge with this, and folks in the chat room are already mentioning this, if you understand the math behind an IP address, it becomes very obvious. And that's one of the things a lot of people get worried about is I have to convert a decimal into a binary to really understand this well. And it seems daunting to want to or need to do that conversion. But the reality is doing this conversion between binary and decimal is very, very easy. I have a whole video that shows you exactly how to do it. It's probably less than 10 minutes long, and you'll know how to do a conversion between binary and decimal for the rest of your life. It is so easy, and you'll wonder once you finished it, why was I worried about that? That is so easy. When we look at this, I put this up not necessarily to confuse or show the different classes, but I wanted to show that this is the difference between a decimal subnet mask and the binary equivalents just under it. So you can see a 255, for instance, is 8 ones. And the ones is what we are specifying when we talk about that CIDR block notation, which is that slash and a number. Anytime you see slash and a number, we refer to that as CIDR block notation, CIDR. And that is where we get this idea of putting these slashes up. This CIDR block notation comes in handy because it allows us to shorten the conversation that we're having with all of these numbers. So you just heard me having to go through 255.0.0.0, 255.255.0.0. It could be a very involved process to go through this over and over and over again. So instead of specifying, for instance, 255.255.255.0, you could just say it's a /24. Wow, look how much easier that was to say /24. What we're really talking about is in the subnet mask, we have 24 bits that make up that subnet mask. Let me flip back real quick. That's /24. I'm going to go back to here. So the 255.255.255.0, count the number of bits, 8, 16, 24. The /24, and that's where we get the 24 from. That's how many ones are in that subnet mask. That's it. That's how simple it is when we start building out these CIDR block notations. And when you start really working with them, let me put up a few more on here. The /16, for instance, means that it's 255.255.0.0. So as you get into looking at these CIDR block notations, and maybe you're not following it initially right now, because you've never gone through and done the decimal to binary conversion, I highly recommend that you spend some time and learn that piece. It will be very, very useful to have that there. And from a perspective of knowing how to do the calculations, I guarantee you it will help you when you go forward in your career. Everything in IT touches the network. This is a great opportunity to learn that. So if you're one of the folks here that answered the /16 at 255.255.0.0, you got that one absolutely correct. Nice job. Didn't fool anybody with that one. All right, on to the next question then. I've got more to go through, so let's move you over to this screen. You can see what's going on. Which of these utilities would be the best choice to help you increase the read and write time of files to a traditional hard drive? Well, that would be interesting to see. You've got a number of choices available to you, and remember, no answering in the chat room. You've got check disk, defrag, NT backup, format, and fix MBR. So you've got a number of things to work with there. There is a lot of different utilities in Windows. So we're now talking about one of the 802 questions, the 220-802 exam, where you have to know a lot about the operating system. You have to know how to set it up, install it, configure it, and then maintain it. And troubleshoot it. So there's a number of tools that help you maintain the systems, a number of tools that help you troubleshoot what's going on. And so you're going to need to know these when you start working with it. To answer this, go to Socrative.com, choose the student login connection, and use the room Professor Messer, all one word. And you'll be able to get in and follow along with us. I like working with optimization of systems. And this is a really good question for optimization because we want to increase read and write time of files to a traditional hard drive. A lot of us are moving to SSD, solid state drive technology, where there's no moving platters, there's no arm that has to go back and forth. And so the speed that we can access files on these devices is very fast. But a number of devices we have still have the now older moving, spinning platters in a traditional hard drive. So you're still going to need to know on those systems how to optimize those particular devices. And when we start working with understanding how to optimize, I think we're able to move things much faster in our systems. Now, in this case, you start looking at what folks are answering with this one, and I got quite a number of responses. I wonder what the answer might have been. Now, we do have a number of folks that choose check disk. You know, one of the things about this question is, and you'll see this a lot on the exam, so this is a really good example. Let's go back to the question. Which of these utilities would be the best choice? So you could argue that, wait a second, check disk can resolve problems with your drive index. It can fix problems, physical problems with your drive. It can identify bad sectors on your drive and fix those, which naturally would increase the read and write time to your computer. So you could make a case. However, of all of the things that are listed, you must choose the best choice. So you have to really go down the list and think, is that really the best choice for this particular instance? It's not really a question about what they're throwing at you. It's not a trick question. They really want you to determine which would be the best way to do this. Because if somebody came to you and said, everything seems to be working fine, but I want to really optimize read and write time, is the first thing you're going to do a check disk, or is it going to be a defrag, or is it going to be an NT backup or a format or a fix MBR? So that's where we get that idea from. There is obviously 90% of you or so have answered defrag. I think we might want to go with that one in this case. NT backup is good for backing up your computer and maybe even restoring. Some people will do a backup and then a restore, because the backup will back up all of your files sequentially and then rewrite them onto your computer sequentially, effectively doing the same thing as a defragmentation of your drive. That's interesting, isn't it? So being able to do a backup, wiping your system and restoring can sometimes increase the speed, at least temporarily, of that. That's a long way to go. You got to go all the way around the barn to get that particular one done. So it's not the best answer here. Format, well, that'll just erase everything on your drive. That might certainly speed things up, but I don't think in a way that you would like. And fix MBR can be used to rewrite the master boot record or fix the master boot record on your computer in some versions of Windows. That's obviously not a problem. If you're in there and already writing, your boot record isn't the issue. So we know in this particular case, it's all about defragmentation. And if you want to look at the defrag capability on your Windows device, you could certainly do that. This will take all these files that are normally split up and put in different places on the hard drive. It will collect them all into one place and now finally write them into one section on the drive. So it's much easier to be able to access those for that ARM. Instead of that ARM moving all over the drive, trying to find all the little pieces, now it can stay in one single place. And it's interesting that although these drives are very fast, when you start taking a single file and splitting it up into thousands of pieces, you're really taking quite a bit of time to finally group all of those pieces together and present it to you. So that can be very, very useful. to be able to do that. There's a graphical version of this in your drive properties in Windows. You can also go to the command line and type in defrag, and it will launch this graphical utility as well. Sometimes it will even tell you, I can't defrag right now because your system is being used. If you restart, it will do the defragmentation during the restart process and be able to work that as well. There's also a schedule, and some systems already have this in their schedule by default. You can go to the Control Panel Administrative Tools Task Scheduler. You might have a schedule already running there. So the folks that answered this, you've got defrag, you were absolutely correct there. No problem. You knew exactly what we were trying to do, and I'll bet your system is pretty optimized if you have a hard drive for reading and writing those files. There's a lot to the A+ exam. There's a lot of different interfaces you have to know. You have to know all these networking pieces. You have to know about the operating system. You have to know about upgrading operating system and maintaining and troubleshooting and all of those pieces. And of course, all of my videos go into telling you how to do all of that. But if you had to watch all of the videos, we're talking over 20 plus hours of videos that you would need to watch to get all of that. Well, I've taken all the notes and everything from those videos and I've collapsed them down into a single study sheet. These are all of the notes as if you would sat there and taken notes yourself. I've also created notes for you. So you're able to see those in my study guides. These are all the notes from my 801 and my 802 courses, and you can purchase these and download them immediately. So if you have I have a test tomorrow, I need to get all these notes, you can take that from my website, download them, they're on your system immediately. It's a PDF file. It's not protected. You can put it on your mobile devices, you can put it on your computer. As long as you're the only one who's looking at it, you're licensed to do all of that without a problem. And I tried to cram everything on. Here's the study guides right here. So my 801 is on the left side here. The 802 guide is on the right side. All of the command lines are on here. The file system questions. You can see the graphics and the displays that are from my videos. You know, all of the different interfaces that you need to know. I've got all of those there as well. Everything is available for you to see. And also every dollar of this goes back to support the website. Our hosting costs are well over $1,000 a month. If you can imagine that, just to have a couple of websites up and running because the site gets so much traffic. So this also helps me keep things running as well. I want to send my appreciation to everybody who's purchased these so far. It really goes a very long way to keeping things up and running. So I appreciate that. And I try to make these for everything. So if you're taking your Network Plus exam, I've got a study guide for you there. If you're taking Security Plus and Microsoft, everything I've got on my website, I've got one of those for you. You can find out about this at professormesser.com/A+SG. So thank you for your support there, and thank you for being on the website and looking at the videos and doing everything that you're doing. I've got plenty more questions for us, so let's go through some more of this. Let's start this one up, and I'll go to the next question, which asks, which of these wireless standards operate at a theoretical maximum of 54 megabits per second? And in this case, it asks you to pick two. It's one of those things you want to be careful about on the exam as well. You will occasionally see a question that wants you to answer multiple answers. And instead of a radio button, you'll see check boxes there. So even if you missed reading that in the exam, you'll notice the selections are a little bit different. And in that case, they want you to select more than this. Now, the A+ exam, at least traditionally, has been one that has told you if you answered 3 and they were looking for 2, it would tell you, oh, you answered 3, only need 2. Or if you answered 1 and you tried to continue, it go, wait a second, I asked you for 2. You need to give me 2 of those. I don't know if it still does that. Maybe I'm getting into too much detail about the exam, but hopefully it still gives you that feedback when you're working with the exam and doing that. There is a lot to deal with networking on the exam and wireless networking specifically. And if we're asking about wireless standards at a theoretical maximum of 54 megabits per second, here's the list: 802.11 AB, GN, and AC. Boy, I put them all up there. So that's every wireless standard that we've ever worked with in the commercial atmosphere of networking. But only 2 of these have a maximum throughput of 54 megabits per second. And if you aren't quite certain of this, the answer may surprise you. Sounds like I'm trying to get link bait there. It may not be obvious which 2 of these this might be. So we might want to dig down into this a bit, you can answer this question at Socrative.com, and the room name's Professor Messer. For those of you that want to study guide links, all of the links that I'm mentioning here are also on my website. If you go to the professormesser.com/live, or you're watching this live, just scroll up a bit. All the links are there. And of course, all the study guides are, of course, updated with all of the latest versions. I do even have people say, you've got, it'll be clear if you put this in the study guide. I make an update and I put it out there. And of course, you're able to download those immediately when you work with that. So hopefully we've been able, let's see how you're doing on this question, which asks about wireless standards. And let's see how we're answering this now. We've got an interesting mix on this one. Now, of course, we're not seeing 100% working with those pieces, but you can see we've got at least two I think most people are looking at, 802.11a and 802.11g. We've got about 35 and 40%, which means not everybody is answering both of those. Oh, so this may be one of those cases where people are answering, but it really isn't the case, or is it? Now it's reverse psychology time on the Professor Messer study group. 15% have said 802.11b, 8% in, and the new standard of 802.11ac, only 3% have said so far. So which one could this be? Well, to know, we go to our nice list that shows us the different 802.11 network configurations, the maximum theoretical throughput on a per stream basis for 802.11a is 54 megabit, 802.11g is 54 megabit, and the AC standard is not currently part of the CompTIA A+ exam. So you can, if you ever see AC on an exam, it's unlikely that it's a question that will count or one that applies to what we are doing. So you really need to know A, B, G, and N to be able to do that. So looking at that list, we can see A and G were the correct answers. So in this particular case, there was no reverse psychology at all. You knew exactly what you were doing. 802.11a, 36%, 802.11g, 38%. Those are the two answers. And if you answered A and C, then you got the answer absolutely right. Nice job in the chat room. Folks doing pretty well. I can see everybody going, yeah, I got that one. Oh, I can't remember this one. What is the answer on that one? Well, I've got another question for you. So we'll keep this party going. You can't even see this one because my big head is in the way. Let's get rid of my head so you can really see the question there. So this question asks, which of these utilities allows you to go back in time to automatically revert your computer to a previous configuration without changing any of your documents and personal files? Well, it sounds like you're kind of going back in time, but not back in time with my documents and personal files. So something is going to allow you to do that. And that's something, here we go. Now you can see Recovery Console, Task Scheduler, System Information, Backup and Restore, or System Restore. It's going to be one of those that allows you to do that piece. Being able to work with these configuration systems and troubleshooting utilities is incredibly important. And each one of these things on the screen is a real utility or function that you can use inside of your computer. So now you have to know which one. That's one of the benefits of going through the 802 exam, is hopefully you've learned about how to use this. So think about that. You've now got a system and something has gone awry and you want to go back. You want to reverse the piece prior to perhaps a certain day. You want to go back in time, but you don't want to lose your documents. You don't want to change your personal files. You don't want to do any of those. That is where, and I start thinking about troubleshooting, that's an important utility to know about. So again, you can go to, here we go, Socrative.com, go to the Professor Messer room name, and you'll be able to answer this particular question. One of the things that I take great, I wouldn't say pride in, but I enjoy doing is throwing things at you that are going to be very much like the exam and give you a chance to think about what these things are. And I kind of like it in a way. I don't mean this in a bad way. I like it when we have a mix of different answers because I feel like people are learning things. But in this case, I think you guys know everything, or 80% of you do. 80% of you answered E, System Restore, which would be the correct answer. Now we have 6% said the recovery console. Just the name sounds like it should be something where you could recover. But the recovery console is used during the boot up process. It's one that you can go into to configure Windows prior to it starting up. It does not allow you necessarily to go back in time, although it is possible to run this system restore from the boot system on your Windows. You have the Windows installation media. You can run system restore from the installation media. So if you've messed up your system so bad that it's not even booting for you to get in and run system restore, you can put your installation media in the computer and start it up. And one of the options there will be to run system restore to be able to do that. The task scheduler, none of you answered that. You know that's not the case. System information, nope. Tells you a lot about your system, but doesn't actually do anything. Backup and restore would allow you to at least back up everything on your computer occasionally, and you can restore it all back, but it doesn't keep, and again, the question said, without changing any of your documents and personal files. And if you're restoring into your system, a full restore is going to absolutely change documents and personal files. And it's not the best answer here. The best answer here is a system restore, which is that 80% of you did a very fine job at answering. These use something called restore points, and your computer at a bare minimum will create a restore point every day. It also will create a restore point automatically if you do something that dramatically changes the configuration of your computer. If you install a new application, it will create a restore point. If you install or update a driver on your computer, it absolutely creates a restore point. That way, if you installed this driver or installed this application and something has gone wrong, you can use a system restore and go back to a previous day. You have to make sure that you allocate enough room for this. So make sure you go out to Windows XP there or Windows Vista 7 in these locations and be able to put down how much space you would like System Restore to use, because putting these restore points in place can take up a lot of room. So you want to be able to do that. Also keep in mind, a lot of people say, I'll do this if I get infected with a virus. But these days, all the viruses and malware are smart enough to know that you're going to do that, and they will absolutely, from a system restore perspective, they'll go in and infect the restoration restore points as well. So you will restore back to a previous point in time, which also now includes malware that wasn't there previously. Oh, those malware authors, they're sneaky in being able to do that. So nice job on that one. If you answered this one, where'd my big head go? If you answered this one right here, there we go. System restore, you got that one absolutely correct. So let's do another question. I know one of the questions people love. You've sent me messages, you've sent me emails, you've talked to me in the chat room, and you just can't get enough printer questions. So of course, I've got a printer question for you. I have to throw one in every time we do a study group. And I think this is one of the challenges we have. Before we get into the question itself, it's these questions that deal with things that we don't normally work with. You know, you can go into Windows and look at a restore point and configure a restore point. You might have even used a restore point before. But when you get into printers, you may not have a laser printer. You may not, and you certainly can't look inside a laser printer and see it working, at least not easily. You may not have an inkjet printer. You may not have a thermal printer. You may not have a daisy wheel printer or some type of chain printer or dot matrix printer, some type of impact printer. You know, those types of things are you do see out there, but it's not something, in fact, you might even not even have a printer these days. We're getting farther and farther away from having things printed out. So I think that's one of the reasons printer questions is such a challenge. But maybe this isn't a challenge for you folks, because the question is, inkjet printer is not printing on both sides of the page. Which of these components would be the most likely cause of this problem? So there's something within the printer and how it operates that would cause an issue of not printing on both sides of the page. It's kind of a useful feature to have that. So is it a problem with the printer carriage, the ink cartridge, the print feed roller, the duplexing assembly, or the print head? It's got to be one of those, and being able to work with those. Printers is quite a bit of a nagging challenge when you start getting into the details of printers. There's so much there to work with. And almost every printer, even different laser printers, have their own nuances about them. Now, fortunately for the A+ exam, we have to know the broad overview of these components and how they operate. But for instance, every ink cartridge is different. I think that's how they like it, to have it set up that way. So of course, to answer this question, go out to Socrative.com and do the Professor Messer room, and you'll be able to answer. And let's see how everyone else is answering. If we look, you can see that, again, I've got a bit of one particular answer that jumps out. 72% of you have said duplexing assembly, but some have said printer carriage, ink cartridge, print feed roller, or print head. This is one of those also, again, with the terminology that we're using. Again, I want to know the most likely cause of the problem, because some of you said print feed roller could be the issue. Well, it absolutely could be the issue, but I need to know the most likely, because we need to know where we start the conversation. We need to know where we troubleshoot and begin the troubleshooting, the most likely place, and then go to the next most likely, and then maybe the third most likely, to be able to do that. So let's look at a duplex. What the heck is a duplex anyway? I thought that was like an apartment. You get a couple buildings stuck to each other. Well, same idea, of course. You've got a front and a back of a piece of paper, and you may want to save some paper by, instead of printing two separate sheets, print on the front and the back. Now, some printers include this capability automatically. Well, now I've got a question that came up. There we go. Some printers include this automatically as part of the hardware, and it's usually a piece of hardware inside of the computer, inside of the printer. But some printers require you to purchase a separate duplexing assembly. And so you would lift up the cover like this, and you'd slide in a different duplexing assembly, usually right in the front where the paper is coming out. Sometimes it will flip the paper inside of the printer. Sometimes it will spit the paper out, and just before it comes all the way out, it sucks it back in again and prints on the other side. It just depends on the type of printer that you might have. But in this case, the duplexing assembly is absolutely the case. It's the one you want to choose or look at when you're looking at those. Well, you've already seen sort of the other question that came up, so here it is. Let's answer this one. It's a question about Windows. So if somebody came to you and said, I want to, I have an older operating system on my computer, or I've got this computer I got from a friend, and I want to run Windows 7 on it. I want to run the Windows 7 Professional x64. And you're looking at the specifications, and you need to know then what the minimums are for running this operating system. Now, in this case, and CompTIA loves to do this, is they will ask you which one of these would not meet the minimum requirements. So of course you have to know the minimum requirements to be able to do this. And one of these would not meet the minimum requirements: a 2 gigahertz processor, 2 gigabytes of RAM, 16 gigabytes of free disk space, and a DirectX 9 graphics device with a WDDM 1.0 or higher driver. So one of these would not meet the minimum requirements. You have to answer the one that would apply there. So you have to kind of think about this one. What do we have as minimum requirements for Windows 7 Professional x64? So that's the 64-bit version of Windows 7. We have to be able to answer those. And we've got different things to choose from. No Googling, no cheating with the Google. Because now this is a lot of detail. And this is one of those things that people say, there's so much to memorize on the exam. Well, that's an exam. That's how it works. You have to memorize it. Everything. You have to memorize everything. You have to memorize how to walk, how to drive a car. You have to memorize how to read a book. And once you know it pretty well. It's one of those things. Once you work with Windows 7 a lot, you start installing them and putting them on systems, you start to get a better understanding of what these are. It's not as foreign a type of idea as it seems initially. So let's see how we did. We've got a good group of people that have answered this question, what would not meet the minimum requirements. And we're all over the place. We got 14% said a 2 gigahertz processor would not be the minimum. 26% said 2 gig of RAM is not the minimum for a 64-bit version of Windows 7. 46% said you're going to need more than 16 gigabytes of free disk space, and 14% said a DirectX 9 graphics device with WDDM 1.0 or higher is not going to do it for installing Windows 7. Now, we mentioned that study guide I had before. If you have my study guide, you can easily flip to that because I've got this diagram on the study guide, which talks about the minimum requirements for Windows 7. And you can see across the board whether you're dealing with the x86, which is the 32-bit version of the operating system, or x64, which is the 64-bit version of the operating system, you need at least a 1 gigahertz processor. For the 32-bit, you need at least 1 gigabyte of RAM. On the 64-bit, you need at least 2 gigabytes of memory. And here's where things change a bit. The free disk space that you need on your computer to install Windows 7 is 16 gigabytes, but for the 64-bit version, they require 20 gigabytes as a minimum. So there's the one we were looking at. Both will use a DirectX 9 graphics device with WDDM 1.0 or higher driver. That's one of those that you work with. So if you answered the thing here that doesn't work out is the option C, 16 gigabytes of free disk space. Now in the chat room, somebody mentioned a common question is, wait a second, if x64 is a 64-bit operating system, why is x86 a 32-bit operating system? That makes no sense. And you would be absolutely correct. It makes really little sense when you put them next to each other. But of course, if you go back, now you have to go back in history to the early Intel processors. And the very first Intel processor that was a 32-bit processor was a 386 processor, they called it. Intel at that time didn't have names for their processors. They called their processors by a numbering scheme. So you started with the 8086 and the 8088 processors. Then you moved up to, those were 8-bit processors. Then you moved up to 16-bit processors with the 286. The upgrade to the 286 was the 386. Guess which one was next? The 486, et cetera, et cetera. But the 386 processor was the very first 32-bit processor. So we really are talking about 286, 386, 486. That's x86. That's your x86 processor. And that's why it's a 32-bit, because that's what those were. Now, of course, right after that, they started using names because they found they could not trademark a number. You can't trademark numbers. And so competitively, you had AMD and other manufacturers using the terms 286, 386, 486. And boy, Intel did not like that. So they, little history there. So Intel started using names, and you can trademark names and nobody can use those names. And when we went to 64-bit, we just use x64 because there are numbers associated with those processors, but we don't use those numbers. So we use x64. So you're right, it doesn't make sense, but it sort of does make sense. So that's where that came from. Let me, at this point, now you've gone through that little history lesson, let me also give you a little bit of a lesson, because some of you have asked in the chat room about practice labs. And so my friends at GTS Learning have some great practice labs to go through. This is called Freestyle. And they're not just practice labs. There's an entire A+ book that's on there. In fact, it's the same book that I used to create my videos. They also have out there Q&A, so you can run through sample exams. And they also have live labs that you can get onto at Freestyle Labs. You go to professormesser.com/freestyle labs, and you'll see things like this. This is using Windows. Here is the disk management, file management. I've run a number of these. System management utilities. We did a number of these. Here's the disk cleanup and disk defragmenter. Let's go under maintenance tasks. And what this is you have computers that are right here on the screen. I'm going to use the HTML5 version, and I can power up these computers. These are all out in the cloud. They're out there somewhere. They're not here. We don't have to build a VM on our computer. We don't have to set up our own operating systems. We don't have to install anything. We don't have to come up with our own labs, because all of the labs are right here. And we can download these labs in a PDF format if we want. I've got this all squished out on my screen, but you can also pop them out and look at them in a different format as well. And you can step through the lab. It's got step-by-step and screenshots that you can work with. And when this system boots up, you simply click on the system and you can connect to it. And it's just like using a Windows system that's in front of you. So it's an easy way by going to this and using it to be able to get these running. And I've got, in this case, a domain controller, a Windows 7 device, and an XP machine here that I can work through. And they're booting up now, and they'll allow me to step through the exercises. Now, one of the things, if you go out to professormesser.com/freestyle labs and start working with it, you'll be able to use these for an hour for absolutely free. So I've got my Windows machines booted up. Let's see if I can connect to one of these. I may need to use my Java because I've got a bunch of other things running in my browser right now instead of my HTML5. And that's where I'm able to start running and using these as if they are just systems that I've got there. That's one of those is when I start working with the front end of these, it's like the computer's right in front of me. And so, yeah, let's run this, and I'll give you a feel for what that looks like. This is the Windows 7 device. So as you're stepping through the Windows 7 breakdown of these labs, you can follow along. So here's my Windows 7 desktop. It's not also an emulation. This is a Windows 7 desktop. So you're not going to run into times where, oh, this doesn't work because that capability is not there. No, this is a full-blown Windows 7 configuration. You don't have to follow the labs if you don't want to. We could go down, for instance, into the system configuration in the control panel and see that indeed this is Windows 7 Professional Service Pack 1, and you can get details about the virtual machine this happens to be running in. And when you're done, you just close the browser and it goes away. So for those of you that have wanted some way to work with your labs, or you wanted some hands-on, but you don't have Windows XP, you don't have Windows Vista, you don't have Windows 7, this is a very easy way to do that. And if you follow the link at professormesser.com/freestyle labs, you also get a discounted price than going directly to GTS Learning. So it actually costs you less to go to this link, and you'll have access to all of these labs for a year. This is one of those that you really works with quite nicely. I think there are a number of changes going on. So if you've gone to the link today, and the GTS Learning site has been changed this week, so if it doesn't take you there, try again tomorrow or later today. I'll make sure I get those links updated so you can find those and get to them. It's a very easy way to work with and use labs in this kind of configuration. So simple and ready to go. And we want to thank our friends at GTS Learning for working with those as well. So I've got more questions for you. Here's one that deals with a format of device, being able to work with storage devices. That is one that I think when you start getting into storage devices and trying to figure out how much can I put on there becomes very important. We were talking earlier before this started today about storage, and somebody was asking, do you carry around a USB flash drive? And what size is it? And I generally don't. I'm using more of the cloud-based services these days, and my Google Drive, for instance, but there's still a need for external storage devices to be able to move things around. So the one here talks about which of these storage types can hold a maximum of 8.5 gigabytes of space. And your options are a single layer Blu-ray, a dual layer DVD-ROM, a single layer DVD-ROM, or a CD-ROM. So it's got to be one of those, right? So you want to be able to look at these and be able to work through them and see which one of these would really hold a maximum of 8.5 gigabytes. Those of you in the chat room, you've been worrying about the lag. You'll notice there's about a 30-second delay between the time that I see something on the screen and comment on it and the time that you hear it. So don't worry too much about those. It goes a little bit faster on some of the other feeds, but not much. But I am working on changing that as well. I've got things to do along those lines. Let's bring up and have a look to see how we're doing with answering this one. This is another one, I think, where you really have to know and memorize this. And this does come in handy. This is one of these cases where somebody says, I have an 8 gig presentation. I need to take this with me on a trip. I need to hand it to someone else. What can I use? And this is what you've answered. 15% said you can use a single layer Blu-ray. And remember, I talked about storing a maximum of this. A dual layer DVD-ROM, 70% said, yeah, that's what it has to be. 12% said I can fit all of that on a single layer DVD-ROM. And some of you have even said, yeah, CD-ROM. CD-ROM's fine. You'll be great with just a CD-ROM. So which one is it when we start looking at these? Well, let's look at all the different optical formats you might be. So here's the list of all of these. And if we go through this list, and we're going through, CD can be 700 megabytes of capacity. We've got a single layer DVD is 4.7 gig. And there's the magic number we were talking about. The 8.5 gigabyte maximum is a dual layer DVD. So there's where we're coming from. We start working with these is dual layer DVD is the answer. If we go back and look, indeed, dual layer DVD seems to be where most of you have answered that particular question. So nice job. You got that one absolutely correct. Notice the Blu-ray can really fit quite a lot. You can fit 25 gigabytes in a single layer Blu-ray and 50 gigabytes in a dual layer Blu-ray. So in our case, we've got a dual layer DVD, and that is exactly the answer. If you answered B, you got that absolutely correct. I mentioned earlier that when you start working with these technologies and using them, we don't often have a lot of different printers at our home or even at our schools. We may not have a lot of different drive arrays or operating systems. So I want to be sure to ask some questions of you that talk about things that we may not often touch, like drive arrays. So I thought I'd put a RAID question in here. This is also, by the way, very popular question is RAID when we start working with this. So the question is, which of these RAID types splits data evenly across two or more disks, but does not provide any data redundancy? You know, a lot of people think that RAID is a backup system. It is not. And in some cases, there's no redundancy whatsoever in RAID. So don't think that you could set up a RAID system and your data's safe. You're good, because that's not necessarily the case. In fact, I'm asking you here, which one does not provide data redundancy in this case? So you've got the option of RAID 0, RAID 1, RAID 5, RAID 1 plus 0, or RAID 1 plus 1. It's got to be one of these, right? One of these RAID types does not provide data redundancy, and it splits the data across two or more separate drives. So there's the question is, which one of these? Oh, good. Some folks have said, I hate RAID questions. I've done my job. I have successfully created a question you don't like. So data redundancy means that you now got data in more than one place. You've got data that has a duplicate, if you will, in at least one spot. In the case of RAID, you might have redundancy in different ways. It may not even be an actual copy of the data, just as long as you can recover that data later on. You've got redundancy there. So there is a protective method to maintain availability of your data. So let's see how we're doing. Which one of these is going to split data evenly across these? Well, we've got a number of you have answered, so we really should go look and see what the answers are. We've got RAID 0, 59% said must be RAID 0. 30% said no, it's RAID 1. And we 7% for RAID 5. Then it kind of drops off from there to RAID 1.1 plus 0 and RAID 1 plus 1. Well, let's step through these then and see just what would go across from a RAID perspective. So we've got some RAID, and the one that we'll start with is RAID 0. So RAID 0 we sometimes will call striping, because RAID 0 will split the file across multiple physical disks. And it also, by doing that, ideally provides additional performance. Now, the amount of additional performance is actually debatable. There are some drive controllers that even when you stripe won't give you much of an improvement. But I think in the overall perspective of what we're looking at here, and from the perspective of the way it should be working, RAID 0 would give you better performance because you can write to both drives simultaneously, affecting splitting the load. You can also put more drives. There could be 3 drives or 4 drives or 5 physical drives, and you take that writing and reading and split it across all of those drives at the same time. So that speeds things up a bit, but there's no redundancy here. You've split your information across separate devices. If you lose any one of these physical disks, you lose your data. You lose half your data, at least in this case. And if you lose half, it's pretty much all of it because you're splitting the file across both of those pieces. It's a little bit of a challenge. And if you're worried about redundancy, this is not what you should run it. And I think for the most part, most people don't run RAID 0. Just not a good idea. There's too many downsides to this. And who needs that much performance increase? If you really want performance increase, you should have been running all of this not on a spinning hard drive, but on SSDs. And of course, you could put SSDs into a RAID configuration as well. You often see RAID configurations for SSDs for performance. Maybe you run that at RAID 0, but it's very unusual to need that kind of performance. You very often might see RAID 1. This is mirroring, where some of the data is, all of your data is on one drive and a absolute duplicate of the data is on the other drive. Talk about redundancy. If you lose a physical drive, that's okay. Everything is stored on that separate disk. Well, that sounds like a backup, doesn't it? So I can use this for backup. No, RAID is not backup. I think I've already said this. RAID is not backup. And if you want to know more details, RAID is not backup. RAID is not a way to back up your data. The obvious one, obviously, the obvious thing here is that if you copy a file and then you overwrite that file, it's overwriting it on both disks. I can't go back necessarily to an older version of that file. That's why it's not backup. And also, it's in the same computer. Ideally, it's in the same computer. You're going to get really bad performance. So if you lose a disk, or what if the whole system gets hit by lightning, that's too bad. You've now lost all of your data as well. Backups are different than RAID. RAID 5 takes this kind of to the next level. We put a little bit of the file on almost every drive but one, and then we put a little parity bit there that we can rebuild later on. So now we're not really duplicating the data, but if we lose any individual drive, we can recover it and maintain uptime. So there is redundancy here. And in fact, it uses less disk than having to mirror. Sometimes there's a performance issue here, but generally you're still able to take advantage of more disk space because you're not duplicating everything, and you still have a way to maintain uptime if you lose a disk. Very, very useful to have that there. You will need to know for your A+ exam, RAID 1+0 as well, which is a stripe of mirrors. So we're striping, but we're striping across duplicate drives. So you can think of that RAID 0 when we were striping. RAID 0 had no redundancy associated with it. But what if you duplicated every one of the drives that you were writing to? Well, that way, if you lost any one drive, you were still up and running. So it's an interesting way to go about doing those things. And RAID 1+0 is certainly a good way to do that. So if we go back and look at how our answers were with this, you can see that the folks who answered RAID 0, you would have those absolutely correct for those. Before we finish up with the main part of our show today, let me remind you that if you have not gone out to CompTIA and downloaded your exam objectives, it's one of the most important things you can do. Everything you need to know about the exam is in the exam objectives. Everything you need to know to answer the question, is this on the test? It's in the exam objectives. Every topic. It's one of the most detailed exam objectives you will find from any manufacturer. If you have not downloaded this and read it, you're doing yourself a disservice before you walk into the exam. This also makes a great checklist. Before you're able to book your exam or before you walk into your exam, you're wondering, do I know everything I need to know? You can go down the list and check it off. And if you know it, you can explain that to someone else. You know that topic, you can give it a big check mark and might help you decide, I need to study a little bit more before walking in the room and going through that testing process. So there's other things that I want to be able to cover next time. And I want to ask you, I'm going to skip over a question here since we're running low on time, and you'll be able to see this question pop up in your Socrative, which is, what do you want to talk about next time? I build these questions based on your input. I try to put my own little pieces in there that I see. If I see somebody asking a question in the chat, I try to take that aside and build a question on it and put it into that as well. It's one of those times where I can really go through and really focus on giving you a question that is specifically on what you would like to know. So as you put these questions in, I'm going to leave this up for a bit today so you can keep typing in your answers to these. And so some of you said, give me some processors, some motherboards, file association topics. Some of you before we started today said drivers, RAID questions. I don't know how many more RAID questions I can show you. You must have really liked that RAID question because we could do more of those. Be careful, I might show you those. Hey, nobody's saying give me more printer questions. What's up with that? I think I know what's up with that. So I'll leave that there for you to go through. I want to thank everybody for joining us. If you've been watching today, we do have an after show. Don't go away. We like to take calls from you, so make sure that you stick around for that. Before we finish up, and you want to be able to get credit for your CEUs today for this, the secret word is RAID. So if you go to the top of the Professor Messer website, hit the Contact Us link, and just put RAID into the body of the message, I'll know what that's about, and I'll send you an email back saying, yeah, you must have watched this all the way to the end. If you'd like to follow what we do all the time, you can follow us on Twitter. And if you do nothing else, maybe you don't have money to buy a study guide, you watch the videos online, one of the best things you can do to keep things up and running here then is to subscribe on YouTube as well. It's remarkable how much that helps me when I have to talk to the nice folks at Google. And of course, every day I'm giving you a Twitter message that has the pop quiz of the day. Again, my quick reference guides, A+SG, professormesser.com/A+SG. You can learn more about those there. You've also got that Freestyle Labs, and I know some of you have said, hey, GTS Learning, they changed their website a bit. I'll make sure that link is updated throughout the week so you're able to get to the Freestyle Labs and be able to work with those as well. And of course, if you want to know when we do these, you can go out to the calendar, professormesser.com/calendar, and be able to see what is going on. For instance, next week at this time, we're doing a Network Plus study group. If you want to sign up for that, you can go out and sign up for that piece as well. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us. If you're here live, you want to stick around and call in, make sure you stick around for the after show. There's been a lot we were able to cover this month. I want to thank everyone for their contributions and for joining us live today. We'll see you next time on the study group. Thanks, everyone. That was a lot. Very short period of time. I say that every time, it seems. Let's open up the show. I need to start the show here, and I need to call in. Let me call in to a secret number. I need to turn this down so nobody hears all this noise as I call in. There we go. I'll let you folks know when. See, I got a caller right now. Sorry, don't have it up. It's going to ask you to leave a voicemail. You'll have to call back on that piece.
Pound.
Okay. What do I need to type in? I need to type in this.
Enter your 6-digit PIN number.
Oh, I have a 6-digit PIN number. Is there a 6-digit PIN number? I think there is. I have to type in a lot of stuff. Let's see that.
You are now in the host room and can match.
I am. I'm in the host room. I can screen. Oh, the nice lady. Thank you, nice lady. So we do have calls. We can go to those. Thanks for sticking the chat room there, everyone. Let me make sure I've got this up on my screen so I can see all of these. And I want to get my chat up and running as well. Okay, let's. I've got some folks that have called in from the 267 area code. Let's see if this works. It's a brand new system. Hi, who's on the line? Oh, and he's listening to the stream. Don't listen to the stream. Listen to the phone. Are you there, caller?
Steve,
say your name.
Here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Hi, what's your name?
Mark.
Hey, Mark. You're away from the microphone, it seems, but we can make out what you're saying. What question do you have for us today?
Just turn it down. James' message so that you can hear me.
We can hear you. We can hear you just away from the mic there. What question do you have for us today?
Question is a printer question.
Oh, see? I knew everyone would love more printer questions today. Hit us.
And my printer question. Are you James' message?
I am. You're on the line. You're live right now.
Okay. All right. I'm a first-time caller.
Welcome.
I do remember from your last study group for December, a person had called in and they asked you the question of what is the best way to memorize the printing process.
Ah.
I thought that the best way to memorize that was Charlie can walk, dance, and talk French. But you had mentioned in the study group that the process of that would be processing, charging, exposing, developing, transferring, using, and then cleaning. Which is it? Is what I'm curious.
That is a question that comes up all the time. And in fact, some books have a completely different set of steps in the process. And what I always do is I have people go right to the exam objectives. I think this is where I get them from. And if I had to worry about where these are coming from, it's the exam objectives that are going to give me that. So if we go to section 4, I'm going to bring this up so you can see this on your screen. Maybe. Here we go. So section 4, I know you won't see this on the stream, but until a little bit later, but they have all of the different things you need to know. And in fact, they have the imaging process listed out as processing, charging, exposing, developing, transferring, fusing, and cleaning. Now, this is a circle, of course. In fact, the drum in your laser printer is going to go around 3 or 4 times before a single page ever prints out. So this process is going on simultaneously all the time as the drum is spinning. So part of the drum's being cleaned, part of the drum's being processed, part of the drum's being charged, part of the drum's being exposed, some of it's developing, other parts are transferring. So it's not like one thing at a time is happening. It's all happening simultaneously. And if you want to know the format or the naming convention that CompTIA uses, go right to the exam objectives and reference them there. I think that is the best place to go to get those. And I think if you're seeing them listed differently somewhere else, you can kind of correlate it back. But I think for your exam, it's best to talk in the language that CompTIA is expecting from you. I think it will help at least make things very easy for you on the exam if you get a question like that. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. You sound different than you do listening to you. I've been listening to you for a long time now, since 2011.
Oh, well, thank you for listening that long. I feel like sometimes that I've been talking since 2011 today when we're in the second hour. I can tell I'm getting a little scratchy in my throat as well. Sorry about that.
I've taken the 701, 702, and the mistake I made was I tried to take them both at the same time and failed.
This is
still staying the course. Yeah.
I see people talk about that sometimes in both ways. In fact, there's a book, a very popular book that says, take them both on the same day, one right after the other. That's your best bet. And I guess the idea is that you've been studying, you do all your studying at one time and walk in. But the A+ exam has so much topics on it just on a single exam. And it used to be that the exams overlap the content quite a bit. With the 800 series exam, the content is very separated out. The only place there's really any overlap is in the troubleshooting section on the 802. You know, there used to be operating system on both exams. Now it's only on the 802. So I think your better strategy these days, and it sounds like this is yours, is take one exam, get it done, and then study for the other one and get it done. I think that's a more sane way. I would go crazy trying to learn all of that at one time. I think that's an easier way to bite off a little bit, and I don't think you're losing anything by splitting them up that way.
That's what I chose to do. I have one more question for you. And
Sure.
That's what my plan is to do, is to just do one at a time and then do the next one. Now, the 801, my question is this. What is the hardest thing that people have trouble with in the 801 that perhaps I should work on more, just to increase my odds even more of passing the test? What should I focus on more where most people would have the most trouble with?
I think that's another good question. It's another common question people ask as well. And I can't say there's any one place. I think it really depends on what you've done in the past. The 801 exam, for instance, covers PC hardware, networking, laptops, printers, and operational procedures. And if you've never worked a lot with computers, the PC hardware may be the hardest part of it. I think a lot of people who've worked a lot with the operating systems and working with the hardware may not have done a lot of networking. Well, then you get into a lot of challenges with that. I think the easy things are the ones we touch a lot, like laptops and computers. Maybe you've installed a video card before. Maybe you've upgraded your memory before. So you've got some familiarity inside. And networking is the big challenge. Or maybe you've never had to deal with operational procedures before, and now you have to understand how to do all of these things in a way that makes sense, like the troubleshooting process or knowing how to work in a work environment. Sometimes those are the hardest things. So I can't say there's any one particular thing, but I think most people get tripped up the most on networking because it's something that's beyond the scope generally of working on computers. And there's a lot of new concepts in there. So people tend to spend a lot of time in that networking, that second domain of the 801 exam.
And the networking is in the 801.
Yes.
Subnetting, stuff like that.
It is. Absolutely is. If you want to look at the 802, since we're talking about those things, let me bring up the 802 objectives real quick. So those domains are operating systems, security, mobile devices, and troubleshooting. So it's a similar scenario there where maybe you've worked a lot with Windows, you've installed Windows, you know how it works, you can move around inside the operation of Windows, and you're fine with that. But then we start asking security questions. And that's an entirely independent certification unto itself that we're getting a little bit of in the A+. Mobile devices, there's now mobile devices like your mobile phones that are listed in there. Those are new topics for this exam. Some people get tripped up on those. And troubleshooting, since it is 36% of the exam, some people want to really focus on troubleshooting because maybe they've worked on computers to use them, but never had to troubleshoot before. So I guess on that one, it really depends on where your comfort level lies when you're dealing with the 802 exam.
Great information.
Well, hopefully that helps. Good luck with your exams, and let us know how it goes.
I've been watching you so long, I feel like I know you.
That's one of those things. I feel like I should be seeing more of you. You should be sending me videos so I know who's watching. That's one of those. I sometimes will go out into a trade show and people will know me. They've known me for years, and I've got to now make up that time really quick. That's one of those unusual things about YouTube, I guess. Mike, thanks so much for calling, and good luck.
Thank you for your help.
Take care.
Take care.
There is Mike, I'm trying to figure out my new system here and how that works. Let's go to the next caller. Since we're here, let me check the chat room real quick. Make sure we're still good on the chat room. We are. Hello, everyone. We've got from, I believe, no, that's me. Let's go to, I was going to pick up my own line. Let's go to the person who just dropped. So we've got one in the queue, the 862 area code. I saw someone else. Hi, are you there, caller?
Hello.
Hi. What's your name?
My name is Allison.
Hi. How are you? What's your question for us today?
Well, my question is, since the Windows 10 was released, I think today or yesterday, do that mean Windows 8 will be on the CompTIA A+?
A lot of people want to see Windows 10 on the next A+ exam. And Microsoft has not actually, they announced Windows 10 yesterday, but again, it hasn't hit the street quite yet. So it's a non-product currently. It's kind of funny how this works out sometimes with CompTIA. With the 700 series exam, they released the exam right when Windows 7 came out. And I'm going back a version of the CompTIA exam just so you have some history. So on the 22701 and 22702 exams, there was Windows 2000, Windows XP, and Windows Vista. Windows 7 wasn't there, but Windows 7 had just come out. And what they did a year later is they updated their exam objectives and added Windows 7 into that list. And you had to know 4 operating systems at that point. And that really created quite a problem for people that were using the old objectives, because that's a major change to the exam. So with the latest version of the CompTIA exam, the 801 and the 802, CompTIA said, we know Windows 8 just came out, But we're not going to do that again to people because even people like me that have training courses had to go back and update the training course and create all new content, and people that didn't know which versions they were working with. So what they decided instead is they're going to let the 801, 802 continue, and they're not going to add Windows 8 or 8.1 to the current 800 series exam. And they've mentioned in a post on Facebook that they will be adding Windows 8 to the next version of the CompTIA certification that is due at the end of the summer of 2015 or into the fall of 2015. So it will happen later this year. About 9 months from now, we might expect to see a new version of the CompTIA exam. Now, on top of that, of course, CompTIA generally gives, or has in the past given, about 6 months of an overlap where you could take both exams at the same time. It's kind of a transition period. So you can really say for the entire bulk of 2015, I feel comfortable that you'll be able to take the 800 series of the exam and you won't need to know any of the Windows 8 that might be included. I would certainly expect to see Windows 8 when the A+ exam is eventually updated. I would not necessarily expect to see Windows 10 on the exam, but one never knows. By that point, we would expect to see Windows 10 on the street. CompTIA tends to ask questions, though, that are going to help you in a corporate or work environment, and it's going to be some time before organizations migrate over to Windows 10. So I don't know if you would expect to see that on the exam or not. That will be one we have to watch for.
Okay. I have another question.
Sure.
So say Windows 8 does become objective on the test.
Okay.
Do that mean I would have to get me another study guide, or you think I could just use the same one that I have?
This is a common question, too, because a lot of people have bought exam books and study materials for the 700 series, and they now want to use those with the 800 series. And I say, well, that's fine because there's about 75% overlap, but your problem is going to be there's still 25% that's brand new. That's different. Mobile devices was nowhere on the previous version. So if you have 800 series materials and the 900 series test comes out and it has Windows 10 on it, and I'm sure there will be much more changes than just Windows 10, in that particular case, there's a lot of materials you don't have. So I highly recommend that if you're going to take the 800 series exam, that you have materials that say on the front of them, this is for the 220-801 and the 220-802 exam. If you have something that says this is for the 700 series exam or the 600 series exam, it's not going to work very well with the latest edition. And when CompTIA comes out with the 900 series exam, I highly recommend that everybody gets study materials that have the 900s that are specifically created for the 900 series exam. Your study materials should absolutely match the version of the exam that you plan to take to optimize and to guarantee the best possible set of knowledge points that you're going to need to pass that certification.
Okay. Thank you.
Good luck with that, and let us know how it goes.
All right, I will.
Take care. Thanks for calling as well. I got, for those of you that were following the pre-show, I have a new call-in system. For those of you before, you noticed the numbers changed. The number now is 855-785-RJ45. So there's a new set of numbers, and I've got a new front end for all of the call-in information. So you'll notice I'm kind of stumbling around trying to pick up on their calls and trying to see who's calling in and where they're calling in from. And there was one caller that did have to drop off. I apologize for that. But if you call back, I've got lines open in the studio line, 855-785-7545, a toll-free number anywhere in the United States. I also made a toll-free number because I wanted to be able to have it absolutely free through Skype. So if you are a Skype user, you can call and there's no credits that are needed. You don't have to pay anything. It's a free call for Skype. So let's go to the phones. Let's go to the 559 area code. Are you there, caller?
Hello?
Hi, what's your name?
My name is Varun. How are you?
Hey, doing good. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you today?
I just wanted to say that I passed the 801 exam.
Great. Congratulations.
and I wanted to know what tips that you have for doing the 802. Like, what's the best amount of time to take to study?
It's a common question. The 802 exam, as I mentioned earlier, very different than the 801. The topics are completely new. It's all about operating systems. It's all about security, mobile devices, and troubleshooting is on the 802. Now, if you are familiar already with mobile devices, you've worked a lot with operating systems, and you've done some troubleshooting, you may find that the 802 is actually easier than the 801. I think the level of difficulty for both the 801 and the 802 are about the same level of difficulty, but there's obviously completely different set of topics for the 802 exam. Obviously, there's a little bit of overlap, especially in the troubleshooting section, because you'll be asked how to troubleshoot a hard drive problem, how to troubleshoot an operating system issue, how to troubleshoot a lot of the hardware that you learned on a previous version, how to troubleshoot networks. Well, we learned about networks in 801. Now we have to troubleshoot them. So I do recommend that people do these, or at least begin studying for the 802 right after you finish your 801, because I think you retain more that way. There's also a great set of objectives. As I mentioned, make sure you get the exam objectives from CompTIA to be able to do this. There is not any particular time frame that you are kept to take the second exam. In fact, you could take them in any order. You could take the 802 first and then take the 801, or you could take the 801 and take the 802 second. And there's no time limit or requirement between taking them. You could take them the same day. You could wait a day and then take the second one. You could wait a month. You could wait 6 months. You could wait a year between taking the first exam and the second exam, or multiple years. Your only challenge is going to be that eventually that second exam is going to be retired. The entire exam set is going to be retired. And I was just mentioning that on that previous call. I would expect into the beginning of 2016 that the 800 series exam would be retired. And if you only took one of the exams and you didn't get a chance to pass the second exam, you have to start all the way over again when they're retired. So you can take as much time between as you'd like and learn as you go, and drop it and come back, but you have to make sure you get both of them done before the exam set is retired. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think the topics are the biggest challenge. It's a bit of a different exam than the 801. There's so much more operating systems. You know, before with the 801, you're in the meat of the computer. You're taking off the computer, you're replacing cards, you're working with the memory. And then in the 802, it's almost all at the keyboard, except for the troubleshooting section. You know, you're installing Windows, you're moving the mouse around and starting up the backup, and you're understanding system restore, and you're working with system information, and it's all operating, or a large amount of it's operating systems and security concepts. We don't really get into the hands-on piece of it as much with the physical computer. It's all hands-on at the desktop, if you will. So I think that's the biggest switch that you'll have to make. And that's why I think a lot of people like bringing up a virtual machine on their computer, or using something like the GTS Learning Live Labs, or doing something where you can touch the operating systems and become familiar with them. Did we lose you, caller? Are you still there?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm still there.
Okay, so I think that's your best place, I think, to go. There is congratulations on the 801. And as you go through the studies with the 802, if there's questions or things you want to know about, anybody can always go to the top of my website. There's a contact us link, which is really contact me. And I can answer those questions for you as well, or we can talk about in the next study group.
Oh, great. When do you think that will be?
Well, that's a really good question. Now it becomes uncomfortable because I'm not good at planning these things out. If I look at my calendar and I look at February, I have not chosen the study group dates for February. And it's usually on a Saturday at noon, and it's usually based on when I have availability. If I do the month to month, and I try to keep at least a month between, tentatively, I might think about the 21st and the 28th as A+ and Network Plus. Although you'll have to keep checking back and see, I may sneak one in on the 14th. I don't know quite yet. It depends on what's going on in my life. So just keep checking back, professormesser.com/calendar, and you'll get the updates.
All right. Well, I want to say thank you for taking the time to do these videos for free. About even though you're making probably making a good bit of cash off the study guide and whatnot. And I hope to see you for the 901, 902.
Oh, I can guarantee you there will be the 901, 902. Congratulations on the 801, and good luck and good studies for the 802.
Oh, and one more thing.
Sure.
Would you be planning to do anything any videos in regards to Windows, like Windows 10 when it comes in full swing?
This is a very popular question. A lot of people ask about what's next on my list, and I have a list, and it's a big list. I'm a single person here doing these. I'm not a single person. I'm a married person, but I'm one person working on the videos. There is an entire set of criteria that I go through to determine what the next videos are. I can tell you that I would love to do more Microsoft videos. I'd love to do more videos from other manufacturers. Right now, I'm focusing on some updates to some CompTIA videos. And when Windows 10 is finally released and we get to see what the reaction is, and I'm expecting the reaction is going to be pretty good, I would love to do some Windows 10 videos when they come out, maybe some Microsoft specific videos. Don't hold me to that. I can't make a commitment to that at the moment, but I would love to get some Windows 10 videos done. Absolutely.
All right.
Thanks for calling.
All right. Well,
and good luck. I think that's one of the things whenever I start trying to figure out what do I do next? What is the next thing that I should work on? I assure you, we talk about this around in our very important business meetings, which is me and Mrs. Professor Messer. Like, what is next? What am I going to do with that piece? That's the one I worry about and work through that piece. So let's see. I've got some more folks in the queue. Let's go to one that is, where am I? Here we go. I think this is an 850 caller. Are you there, caller?
Hello?
Hey, 850, are you there?
That's me. Yes,
Hey.
sir.
That sounds like a very familiar area code. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Tallahassee, Florida.
Well, I happen to know where that is. So what's your name?
My name is Brandon. I'm calling in regards of, actually, it's not really an 80 or an 801 question.
That's okay.
I am going for my 801 in February though.
Okay.
I too have a Windows 10 question. What do you know as far as the HoloLens and that stuff? How would that be put onto like an exam question base?
And if, for those of you that didn't watch the Windows 10 event that occurred this week, Microsoft introduced a number of very interesting technologies with the Windows 10 operating system, and the breadth of what they're doing with Windows 10 is impressive. There's always that concern. Well, since Windows 8 came out, everybody's been concerned, like, what are they doing? Have they lost their minds? And now that they've done Windows 10, you can see that they've put a lot of thought into making an operating system that is going to be much more accessible and usable for people across many different platforms. And I'm a person who works in all different operating systems. If you're on my website, you're on my Linux servers. If you're watching this study group, you're watching it being broadcast from Mac OS. If you've seen my other videos and the things I have in my office, there's a ton of things that run on Windows. So I'm one of those where you can try to have an argument with me about what operating system is going to be the best. And I'm going to say they all are, because I use them and I love them. So now we get into Windows 10, and they're introducing technologies that are now using a completely different set of methods. And as I was watching it, I was wondering, how are we going to do certification videos based on these things? Because I look through that lens whenever I'm watching these presentations.
Yeah.
And I don't know. You know, one of the things, I don't think they're going to come out with Windows 10 on the next iteration of the A+ certification, but they could. And if they could, how deep are they going to get into it? And I think a lot of, if you look at what CompTIA has done in the past, they've really focused on how businesses use the operating system. They haven't focused a lot on how people use the operating systems at home. They haven't spent a lot of time on with Windows XP and Windows Vista on the media servers, which ultimately didn't go anywhere anyway. They don't spend a lot of time on integrating with the home systems. But I think now they may have to do more of that because the operating system is going to be tied more into your home, obviously more into your business and the things that are around it, and integrating with these peripherals that are outside the scope of what people mostly think an operating system is. So I find it's going to be very interesting to see what CompTIA does with that and how deep we have to go into Windows 10.
I agree. I do have an 801 question, though. In your office, I see I am just a new watcher of your study group, but in your office, I want to know what network topology you use.
Oh, this is for my studio. And by the way, my studio here, we're broadcasting live from our world headquarters in Tallahassee, Florida. So
oh, nice.
We are we have quite an interesting scenario here, and I plan on doing a tour, a virtual tour that I can post on YouTube so that people can see this. My network currently is combined with the network in my home. So I have what you can think of as 3 IDFs. There's really not an MDF or a main distribution frame. I guess I really have one MDF here in my studio, one in the main part of where my house is. But I've got a VLAN for my studio. I've got a VLAN for my home. And I've got a VLAN for, in my case, I've got some security cameras that I use here as well that all work on multicast and create a mess if you put them with all of the other devices on your network. So I've got a VLAN carved out for those. I have another VLAN, now that I'm thinking about it, carved out for my audio system. And if you watch the stream, I've got this mixer that's to my left. It's kind of hard to see from the where I'm sitting, but this mixer that I have is all IP based. So I'm plugging in an analog microphone, for instance, and talking into it. But the mixer is grabbing that and creating IP packets of it, sending it out to other components that I have to do audio processing and to make sure that it's cleaned up and it sounds good. And then finally sending that out to a video switcher and out to the stream. So I've got a completely different VLAN just for those audio communications because they're also using a lot of multicast and they'll create a havoc with everything else I'm doing in the studio. So that's a long answer to me finally saying I've really got to draw this out and show people what we're doing, because it's a very good example, I think, of having a switch using routing functionality that might be in a switch with multiple VLANs and having all of these things work together. And you get into not only switching, routing, you get into routing tables, static routing, how to configure them, how to troubleshoot them. I could even do some dynamic routing here if I wanted to, although my network relatively simple. And on top of that, of course, I've now got to go out to the Comcast network to be able to do all of this. And in fact, I've called other providers in Tallahassee. There's the Tallahassee connection. I've now called other providers to see, can I get additional internet drops brought in here as a backup? And we're getting to the point where now people are starting to lay fiber in the ground, and we may be able to get some pretty impressive throughputs through this. I need to document how that's set up and show people as well. And as I mentioned, I do want to do a video where I show how all of these things work together so that you can see how do you blend all of these different technologies together. It's all on the network, and it all applies back to really the A+, the Network Plus, and the Security Plus exam as well.
Yeah, I would like to see that because I love watching how your studio's set up.
It took a while to get it set up. It's been a process of years to get to this point, and it's never done. It's like an airport or a hospital. They just keep doing construction. I keep adding on things. I keep improving on different pieces. There's soon there will be the lights that I have in here are on the floor, and you can almost see the bars on the screen if you watch the replay that are up above a big monitor that's in front of me. Those are going to be hanging from the ceiling shortly, so I can get them off the floor and stop tripping over them and potentially damaging the equipment and myself. So there's a lot to do, and I want to document that as well.
All right. Well, thank you, and I hope to. I will definitely continue to watch your study groups.
Thanks so much, and it's nice to talk to somebody who actually in the same hometown. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
There is, I called a provider. It was this past week, and I said I want this extra internet connection because I want to be able. I've got a nice fast internet connection. I've got about 100 megabits in, and I think it's 20 out that I'm running now, which is great. That works great for streaming like we're doing now. But I want an extra one. I was thinking I would having a separate line that was like a 24-hour stream. But unfortunately, where I live, the only other provider in town is the LEC and the local exchange carrier. It's the phone company. And they have DSL. And unfortunately, I think the best I can get is a 10 down and a 2 up from them. But they are putting fiber in the ground around here. So I'm hoping that I'll be able to have that separate link shortly and be able to work with that. Let's go back to the phones. We have the 812 area code. Are you there, caller? And it's no noise. Are you there, caller?
Yeah.
Oh, there you are, caller. Hi, what's your name?
Sam.
Is it Sam?
I have a question. Yes.
Oh, okay. Hi, Sam.
I have a question about renewing the A+ certification.
Oh, very okay.
Well.
Hit me.
Basically, my plan is to do all three, Network A+ and Security+. But is there anything that renews all three of them at once if I ever do get to that point?
Oh, and there is, and there are myriad challenges with renewal and things to consider with renewal. For those of you that have gone out, and you're not going to see this on the phone, of course, but CompTIA has a continuing education program. And for those of you that aren't familiar, the CompTIA exam is good for 3 years from the moment you pass that second exam and you get your certification, or for Network Plus and for Security Plus, you take one exam. The day you pass it, it's good for 3 years. One of the things that you can do is renew these so they will extend another 3 years without you having to have the exam expire and have you take the exam again. And there are a number of ways to do that. One of the ways is to accumulate CEUs, continuing education units. And there are a number of certification exams that fall into this 3-year cycle. And you can do different things. The CompTIA website will document and show you the things that you can do to renew. And they have a list on their site that talks about all of the things that you go through to be able to do this. And it's almost a math process to be able to make this happen because you have to count up these CEUs. Well, one of the things that's kind of hidden in here that's interesting is if you take a higher level CompTIA certification and pass it, then it automatically renews all of the lower level certifications. You effectively reset your renewal date for another 3 years for everything. So if you took and passed your A+, and you got your A+ certification, and in 6 months you pass your Network Plus, now both your Network Plus and your A+ will have a 3-year expiration. If you wait a year and you take your Network Plus and you pass it, now your Network Plus, your Security Plus, your Network Plus, and your A+ will now have another 3 years for all of them. And you can keep doing this all the way up the list. And CompTIA has a list of these that include Storage Plus, Cloud Plus, and the CompTIA Advanced Security Practitioner, or CASP. So you can continue past the Network and Security Plus and keep getting CompTIA exams to renew your certification. You can also take third-party certifications. You can take a Microsoft certification, a Cisco certification, a VMware certification, and many others, and gain CEUs. But when you go beyond taking a CompTIA exam to renew, you have to pay CompTIA a fee every year to participate in the continuing education program. So that's another thing to consider. You can take a CompTIA exam and pay nothing for these yearly annual renewals, or you can get those CEUs somewhere else and you just pay the annual fee to maintain that CEU and keep it going. I think most people will take a CompTIA exam, sort of like you're doing, because you don't have to pay anything extra. You just pay for that next exam, and you were going to take that exam and certification anyway, so it's no extra money out of your pocket. But if you're not planning to do that, you can go to a training course. You can watch a live event online. You can have your own blog and create blog entries. You can teach a class. All of these things go towards CEUs, and you have to download the list of CEUs from CompTIA's website to really see what all of those different options might be. Does that make sense, Sam?
Yes, it does.
I think most people will simply take the next CompTIA exam just because that's the easiest way to do it. But if you've maxed out and you think, I've taken my A+, I'm not going to take Network Plus, I'm not going to take Security Plus, but I do want to keep my certification, you can either wait until the next version of that exam comes out and take it again, or you can accumulate CEUs and pay the annual maintenance fee to be able to process those CEUs. That's kind of your two options.
Thank you.
Well, good luck with that. I think there's a lot to deal with. And go to the CompTIA's website, and I had it up there. Just search for Continuing Education CompTIA. There's plenty of information to download. They have PDF documents that really go into detail about what's required when you renew, and I think that clears a lot of it up. And if it doesn't, just send me a note. Go to the Contact Us link at the top of the website, and I can point you in the right direction.
Will do. Thank you so much.
Thanks for calling, Sam.
Mm-hmm.
There's certifications, the renewal process. You'd think it would be easy. There's a lot of nuances, so you have to kind of keep going to the nuances and work through those pieces. But the CompTIA website, plenty of information on there. Let's go to the 781 area code. Are you there, caller? Hi, what's your name?
Yeah, hi, my name's Kevin Gainey.
Hello, Kevin. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you today?
Well, first of all, I'm a fan. And secondly, go easy on that raccoon, please. I'm also a fan of raccoons.
Well, so are we. So yeah. For those of you who don't know what we're talking about, Kevin was obviously watching in the pre-show. And there was I have these security cameras outside and caught a raccoon this morning that had taken down one of our bird feeders and was on the ground enjoying the fruits of his labor. So no, we like to have the critters around. They're going to continue. We have flying squirrels here, raccoons, deer, coyotes, and all kinds of birds here. So there's always going to be something on the cameras. What can we do for you today, Kevin?
I'm working with the high schools in Lynn, Massachusetts, and I'm just convinced that we can get these kids to take the A+ exam. I'm looking for some guidance. I've looked at your videos, and they make great sense, and I think they work well for the students. We teach the Cisco ITE and also the intro to networking at our traditional high schools, and we're going to start those at our tech high school.
Okay.
But I'm looking for some guidance as to what we should be doing to get them to that A+, so they can pass that test. I think the Cisco gets about 75% there, 75%. There's a huge gap there, and I need to fill that.
There is, and I don't know that the gap there is as huge as you might think it is. The Cisco ITE, for those of you not familiar with the Cisco products, it's the Cisco IT Essentials, and it is effectively an A+ set of materials that they put into their own format. So they've scrambled up the exam objectives a bit, but if you read through the IT Essentials certification from Cisco Networking Academy, it's the same exam, and there are differences. And I've noticed online, I was looking at some where people were comparing, and they had posted spreadsheets and other things where they compared IT Essentials and the A+ exam, and they had linked up where all of these things were the same. So you knew if you took the IT Essentials in the first section, that correlated back to section 4.1 of the 802 exam or whatever it happened to be. And I would agree that I think high school students are perfectly capable of learning this material. There are a number of K through 12 or high schools that contact me all the time. This is, we're using this in our high school. In fact, a lot of the challenges they have is that K through 12 schools, public schools in the United States, have some very specific filtering that must be, that's federally mandated. They must have filtering in place. And sometimes the filtering and lack of bandwidth for our public schools means that they're not able to stream things very well from YouTube. So they'll end up getting student seats of my course, or what's even easier is I talk to their IT group within the schools, because there is a method on YouTube called YouTube for Schools. There's also a YouTube for Education, which is different. YouTube for Schools is a way for schools to be able to configure their networking equipment to effectively whitelist YouTube videos, so that we can have students still go to YouTube, because there's a lot of great educational materials on YouTube, and people can watch those in a school. But then you can prevent people from watching cat videos, because that has no educational value. In fact, that makes you dumber. So don't watch the cat videos. Watch everything that might be educational for that piece. The correlation of those together, I think if you're already teaching the Cisco IT Essentials, you've got, as you mentioned, pretty much everything you need. Some instructors online, if you Google around, or if you send me a note, I can send you the links to the things I found with spreadsheets where people have correlated those together. And I think another challenge, especially for high school students and for me, is I like to have the physical box in front of me. If I can, I've got pictures in my videos, but it only goes so far. If you can lift up a PCI card or a PCI Express card and put it back into a system and build it yourself, it goes a long way to embedding that into your brain. And I think it helps more when the training comes along. The reason I did the videos in the first place was there just wasn't a lot of freely available materials on the internet for something that I feel is an incredibly important foundational aspect of technology. And I think we need more of those on YouTube, and it's still not enough. It's still touch and go to find the things you'll need for this. But send me a note. I think we sent a note earlier. We can keep the conversation going, and I can send you at least some of the links I found online that correlate those pieces together, if that makes sense.
It makes great sense, and I'm going to, when I send the note, I'm going to ask you a question about bandwidth as well, because that's an issue that we're dealing with.
This is a very common issue in public schools around the country. A lot of what I've done in the past 7 years has been going to schools, colleges, universities, K through 12s, and talking to them primarily about security, but that always comes back to also conversations about bandwidth, quality of service, being able to use and restrict based on certain criteria. We could talk days about those things, and I suspect we probably will.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, that's a pretty exciting thing in a K-12 or high school to have kids learning these things. And please keep us updated. I would love to hear the process you go through and what's happening with the training and what kids end up getting their A+ certification.
Yeah, our administration is committed to doing something more for our kids to, like, honestly get them job ready. And I'm pitching A+ because my experience is that works.
I love it. This is one of the big reasons I put these videos on YouTube in the first place. So good luck with that.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. There's a lot to do there. I try to, every once in a while, I get my video courses into different libraries, or I get them to different organizations. There's so many. In being able to work with a lot of veterans groups, a lot of school systems, universities. I think having the videos for free on YouTube helped quite a bit, and then we try to keep doing that. Okay, my voice is holding out, so we're going to keep going here to the next caller, which is the 661 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name?
Good morning, Professor. How are you doing
this Anthony. Morning? How are you, sir?
I'm fine, and you? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Get the package I sent you?
Yes, I did. I was
Excellent.
calling to thank you for that also.
Very welcome, sir. Very welcome. Thank you for being a customer. Thank you for your support. It's the least I could do. I'm sorry it took so long to get it to you.
No, that's okay. It's better now than never, huh?
Let's hope so.
Thank you. Yeah, I took that computer apart. I had to swap out the fan, the heat sink. Had to get a part from eBay.
Where are you getting all of these computers, by the way, that seem to just break in
this is a computer
perpetuity?
that I purchased 10 years ago for my kids.
Okay.
And it's a good computer. It's been good over the years. So
I guess so. It's 10 years.
Yeah, I just got the what do you call it? The heat sink slot from eBay on another motherboard. And swapped that out, swapped out the power supply.
Okay.
And nuked the hard drive, like you told me.
Yep.
You know, and the computer's the one I'm looking at and talking to you right now.
How about that? So it's finally up and running again. What kind of processor is in this 10-year-old computer that you're using?
What is it? AMD 2? Is it 2 plus?
Wow. What operating system have you got running on it?
I'm running a Windows Vista.
Right on. So it's up and running. It's doing what it should be doing. That's it's remarkable because a lot of people, and I'm gonna go back to something someone said to me earlier in the week, and they were talking specifically about A+. Like, you had all this old hardware and software on the A+, and if you start looking at the exam objectives, none of it's really that old. And the system that you're talking about right now, it's not unusual to find people still running these systems in the environments they're using. I was reading a Reddit article recently, it had to be in the last month, where somebody finally was able to retire one of their OS2 systems. Thinking this is an application that's been around forever, obviously, probably 20 years. They probably have one of those machines. Nobody touched this machine, because if anybody touches it, we're in trouble because nobody knows how to manage this device.
Nobody knows how to manage it.
But you still got those. They're still running in people's data centers. So you still have to know these things.
Yeah, I have a Dell 2400 in my lab in the back that I have Windows 7 on. I have this one in the living room, and then I have another one in my office that I run Windows Vista on also.
Wow. It's a good way to do it. I think getting your hands on as many operating systems helps you. Even if I think a lot of people should load up a VM and load up a version of Linux and play around with it. You won't be asked, obviously, anything about Linux on an A+, or really even a Network Plus or Security Plus. But just understanding the operating system and getting down to the command line and getting a feel for how it works helps you across the board. You can take a lot of those things back and use them, the ideas from that, into Windows as well.
Yeah, I just fixed a touch screen, Windows 8. You know, I'm not too much on Windows 8, but I took care of it and took out all the viruses and everything and gave it back to the people, and everybody was satisfied. And I was satisfied, too, because I was able to get in there and do what I had to do. Nice.
And then for touchscreen Windows 8, that's a perfect type of environment to work with that operating system.
Yeah.
That's great. And what's your next step with this 10-year-old computer then? Is this project done? It's off to the next one?
It's done. It's off to the next one. I purchased a 1 terabyte hard drive that I was going to put in there, but this hard drive seems to be good. And I also put 1 terabyte in there as a backup, so I'm getting all the information from one drive to the other, and it's backing up all the time.
Nice.
So I took that information in kind.
Yes.
So I don't lose any more information.
This is something
yeah, I'm going to let it run until it runs out.
Good. And well, you should. That's what we should do with all of ours. I've got some older systems here. I need to do exactly the same thing. Start them back up, get them running again, and see if I can do something functional and useful with them.
Yeah.
Well, that's great to hear. I'm so glad you got the package. Thanks for giving us the final bit of the story on the system. And I can't wait to hear what the next project's going to be.
Well, you know, that's the computer world, like my teacher used to say. Nobody ever brings me anything that's working.
It's never a dull moment. That is for sure. I guarantee you.
Yeah.
That's absolutely the case.
Okay, you have a good weekend.
Thanks, Anthony. Same to you, sir.
And thanks for the information, and thanks for the USB.
Absolutely. Take care.
Okay.
There's always a story. Anthony, we get to hear from him all the time, and there's always an interesting project going on. And I'm like living vicariously through him because he's working on something like, I know exactly what you're doing. Okay, got to replace the motherboard. Okay, get another monitor, get a screen, plug it in, and do those pieces. Let's go to the 240 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name?
This is Kenny from Silver Spring, Maryland.
Hey, Kenny from Silver Springs. What can we do for you today?
Well, I talked to you the last time because about getting my laptop fits the LCD screen.
Right.
Man, I told you about the backlight.
Right.
I got it fixed.
So what give people a background on what you were running into for the original problem, and then let's find out how this worked out.
Yeah, well, like I said, it was the backlight. You know, the screen went out, and then it was the backlight issue because the laptop was working fine.
Yep.
But I couldn't see enough on the screen.
Right.
And so I went to one of the computer shows, and the guy, he fits it right there and then. He replaced the backlight. He replaced the display.
Oh, really?
Screen. I paid for and I paid for like $70. I saved a lot of money.
So tell us about this event you went to. Was this like a local computer show that was going on that you went to?
Yeah, it was a Computer Market Pro shows that they do up in the D.C., Maryland, Virginia area.
Okay.
And they go to different locations, and it's free. And so they had like these people from there that work in these computer stores, and they just be there. And, you know, they sell laptops, they sell displays. They have a certified computer technician that can fix your monitor right there, your laptop. I mean, any part they have it. And, you know, and the guy, he had everything. You know, he had that. They did. I watched them did it. The guy unscrewed the screen, took the old LCD out, and he put a brand new one in, and a new backlight. And that was like only 10 minutes. I was just shocked how easy it was.
They're like a rodeo. They grab the thing and they spin it up and their hands up in the air and the buzzer goes off. They're so fast. They do it over and over and over again. I get in and I just recently changed an LCD display on a laptop, and I have to go in there and with my old eyes, I've got to bring out the magnifying glass thing I put on my head, and I have to figure out which screws go where. But these guys have done it over and over and over again. I would almost gladly pay them that much to do it for me instead of me going through the process. Plus, it's not the easiest thing. You can easily break something inside a laptop. So easy.
No, it's not. It's not easy. I saw how tiny those screws are and how careful you got to be to take apart the LCD monitor. That screen and. Yeah, I was surprised how thin it was. I said, "Wow, that's really thin."
So, did they have the extra parts, or did you bring parts with you?
Oh yeah, they had it.
Oh,
they had it
fabulous.
right there. The guy had it in his truck. He had the screen, and he had to replace everything. He said, "I can replace the screen for you too." And I said, "Well, yeah, that's fine." And it was cost me $70. I said like almost $150.
That's less expensive than buying the parts on eBay and having them shipped to you and having you do it yourself. Because I know I just did this. That's much less expensive.
Yeah, I was just amazed.
Very nice. Very nice.
I do have one quick question. The 802, the computer labs.
Yes.
The freestyle computer labs.
Yes.
I looked on there, right, and it only shows for the 802.
Right.
They don't have one for the 801.
Right. So if you look at the exam objectives of the 801 exam, nothing in the objectives, there's no command lines in the 801. There's no working at the Windows desktop in the 801. There's no really typing anything into the keyboard in the 801. So effectively, the 801 is knowing your hardware, taking things apart, adding memory, which you really can't do in an online lab. So the 802 exam, of course, has operating systems. You have to know all these command line features and functions. You have to know the networking command lines and the troubleshooting command lines. All that's 802. It lends itself more towards online labs. Now, in the 801 exam, you will be asked to do performance-based questions. And those performance-based questions obviously won't be command line questions because there's no command lines in the 801 objectives, but they might ask you to match an interface, picture of an interface with what the name of the interface might be. So you may have to match, or they may say, here are 5 interface types, put them in order of the slowest to the fastest. I don't know. I'm making these up because I'm not repeating anything that's out of order or going outside the scope. Those are obvious performance-based questions you might see on an 801 exam. And that's why you see the freestyle course has 802. There's no 801. And that's why, because there's just no lab that you could do for the 801 exam. It's all in the 802.
Right. So basically just studying notes off an 801.
Yeah, it's one of those where the 801 you have to know what video types and displays work this way. What's the maximum length of an Ethernet connection? What do those interfaces look like? What's the process of upgrading memory? How do I know what are power supplies? What do those look like and connect to on the motherboard? You have to know a picture of the motherboard. If you can look at a motherboard and you can pick out the different components on a motherboard, that's the 801 exam.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I'm going to take the 801 first, just study notes in there, and then afterwards, I'll probably take 802 separately and just use the computer lab for that. I think probably best to do.
I think it is, and I think the things you'll need to know for the 801 will be those memorization, networking, configuring a computer, and those types of things, and you won't need an online lab for that.
Okay. Cool. Well, I just want to let you know my laptop's working fine. I can see everything. I mean, I'm getting used to this display. It's so glassy.
Nice.
It's like I look at my reflection of my face.
Nice. It's like you got a completely new upgrade for everything in there. And I like hearing the end of the story, knowing how that turned out. That's great, Kenny.
Yes.
Thanks for calling.
Well, it's good talking to you. And sure.
And let us know how the 801 goes as well.
Okay.
Take care.
Take care.
Thank you. Have a good weekend. It's
all right.
We need more of those. I've been to some of those computer shows before. I have an amateur radio license too, and I go to some of the amateur radio shows. They do those. And they have also the guys that do the mobile devices. Like I've replaced the battery in a number of different iPhones that my family has had. So I've replaced batteries. I've replaced the screens. You can go to iFixit and buy the parts. They're not inexpensive, and you can do that. And one of the things that I find when I'm working with those things is that this is hard. I have to get in there, and with my magnifying glasses and plenty of light and the really tiny, intricate pieces. These are not brain surgeon hands, I assure you. And it's not an easy thing for me to do. But we finally get through it and follow the process. And it's not hard. It's just intricate. And I just don't enjoy that. But at these shows, they got the people there and they're swapping things out, and they're doing all kinds of things with this, and they're doing it in 10 minutes. Like, I need a battery change. And they look at it and go, there you go. There's your battery change. How'd you do that? But they do it so much all the time that it's not a big deal for them. We did have a question that came in while some of the calls were going on, where somebody was wanting to take the A+ exam, but they have a disability, and that could be a physical disability. It could be dyslexia. It could be understanding English very well, a hearing problem. It could be a number of different things. CompTIA does have a process in place to provide you with additional time and additional resources so that you can take the exam in the best possible way. So if you have any of these things that you're concerned about, call CompTIA. Their phone number is right on their website, and explain to them what you're trying to do. You can also email them, explain what's going on, and they will give you the process that you need to go through to take the exam, the location where you need to take it, and the things that'll be in place for you. That comes in very, very handy when you're working with those things. Just useful there. We've got, before my voice gives out, been going a couple hours now, but we'll go to 586. Are you there, caller? What's your name? Are you there, caller? I hear you, caller. 586. What's your name?
Hi, Professor.
Hey.
My name is Anil. How you doing?
Doing good. You say Anil or Neil?
Emil.
Okay. Hello, Anil. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Actually, I am in a dead end job, and a friend of mine just mentioned CompTIA. I was looking into going to school for computers.
Okay.
And I don't know. And I am actually I'm kind of nervous. Because I just came to your website and I saw your live chat, and I was like, oh my God, I can talk to him. So I just wanted to get a little bit of information about the computer fields and the opportunities. Basically, I don't know.
It's a common question, and I get it all the time. And the scenario you're in is not uncommon, where you're working one type of job and you're thinking IT is much more interesting to me. My philosophy, of course, that life is short and you should do things that are fun and that you enjoy. And it just helps, to my mind, that IT is also an incredibly fast-growing field, continues to be a fast-growing field, and quite lucrative. And the jobs are professional positions where they're paying some decent money. So one of the things that comes up, though, is people, when they're moving here into this type of role in IT, or technology in general, want to be able to get the training they need to get that foot in the door, to get that first job. And it's not any one thing. I think certifications is a good place to start with learning the things that you'll need to learn from a practical perspective. We could have a very long conversation about 4-year degrees versus getting a degree that's a technical degree or something specific, because quite honestly, jobs working in IT and with computers and servers and voice over IP systems and security are very technical jobs that don't necessarily require a 4-year degree. I think there's other advantages 4 years degrees can give you, but I don't think it's a complete necessity. And none of these things are required to get a job in IT. You could get a job with no experience and no certifications and no technical degree. You certainly could. It's much easier if you have some of those things. None of those things replace the other. You can't get certifications and expect them to replace practical experience or to replace a 2 or 4 year degree. But nobody's ever said that they do. I often get people that send me a message saying, well, I'm not going to waste my time with certifications because practical experience is the most important thing. I think there's a pretty good argument to say that practical experience is incredibly valuable. And when you're going in for an interview, not all positions require it, but nobody's expecting a certification to replace that or be in something you can swap out for that. A certification and a formal degree and experience are all things you combine together to give yourself the best opportunity when you're walking in the door or trying to get the next position or move up the ladder in your career. The question about the certifications and whether you go take a class, whether you do it online and read a book, is really up to the individual. If you're someone who is very well directed and can learn things very well by reading a book and watching videos, a lot of people say the A+ is well positioned for that. I have been in situations where going to a class and having it in a very a much more longer perspective, maybe over a semester, is a very common thing for taking A+ class, and going and touching the equipment and pulling out the cards and putting a computer together. A lot of people learn better that way. It's more of a personal opinion of what works for you. There's obviously a very different cost for these things. Community colleges are much less expensive than going to a third-party training company. Third-party training can be thousands of dollars for these certifications that, quite honestly, are only one part of the overall piece of the puzzle. I think that community colleges are an excellent place to go, even if you only want to get the A+ training. I think those are good alternatives for doing that, or a technical college that's local to you that does A+ certification. That's all you need are those, and those are generally less expensive than going to a third party for that. Or do it yourself. The resources are online. Get the books. I put every single one of my videos is online to watch absolutely free for that very reason. I think that's the way this information needs to be disseminated. And there's a lot of people in the chat room, which you've already found, that you can ask questions of. They're here There's people in here all the time. You can ask them some of the things that are happening with you. We've got the study groups available, and maybe a lot of people on my site just do this themselves, and they don't take a formal training class. Does that help a little bit, Anil, with kind of getting that straight in your head?
Yes. I really appreciate the information. Also, the last question.
Sure.
I was looking at doing the because you do have the videos on your website. So I was hoping after doing that and getting the certification, what are the prospects of finding work as with no experience in the IT world?
It's going to be dependent on different organizations. I have worked with some companies where coming in the door, they expect you to have a minimum of certain things. Now, if it's an entry-level position, these companies know that most of the time you're not going to have practical experience, and they're hiring you with the expectation that they're going to need to train you on a number of different things. But if you have an A+ certification, they like to see that kind of thing. And my recommendation would be to go to the monster.coms, the dice.coms, the indeed.coms of the world. Go out there and look at some of the help desk positions, the technician positions that are out there being posted, and they'll tell you what they're looking for. Some organizations don't care at all. They are going to take you with no experience. You might not even need certifications, and they'll hire you straight away. That's relatively unusual, but they're out there. And they're doing that with the expectation that they're going to have to train you, but they also know they don't have to pay you as much as somebody who has a formal degree and a lot of certifications under their belt. The converse side of this are things like the U.S. federal government, which has very specific requirements that if you're in an IT role with the government at a certain level, you must have this certification. It's not even a question. You have to have it. It's very common to get the Security Plus certification in some of those roles because you have to have that or you can't have that particular job in the federal government. Many commercial or non-governmental agencies may require it, or they may say, we like it if you have that, or they would like to see you get that within the first 6 months where you're on the job, that kind of thing. Every organization is different in their philosophy, but I would also recommend that you start making some connections with the people in your area who work in these IT organizations. And there are a number of groups in your town somewhere, I assure you, that or nearby, that are user groups for VMware, for Cisco, for technology and IT in general. There's certainly IT road shows or trade shows that go on that come through that you can visit absolutely free. You can go to the show and walk around and make connections. Go to meetup.com and see if there's any IT groups in your area and go to what they're doing. Even if you aren't, you know nothing about what's being presented there, it's a great opportunity to network with people so that you can meet the people who are in IT in these places, and you can ask them, hey, are you guys hiring for the help desk? What do your help desk people tend to look for when hiring? Is there anybody in your organization I can talk to so that I can get a better understanding of what you're looking for so I can get the training that you would need to get a job with you? These people are there. They're on LinkedIn. They're at these meetings, and it's a great opportunity to network as well. Don't limit yourself to just certifications or just formal training or just experience. Use or contacts. Use all of them as much as you can.
Right. I thank you so much. I appreciate the time, Professor.
Good luck, Anil. Let us know how it goes. If questions come up, go to the top of the website. There's a contact us link right there. Hop into the chat room. I'm often online, and we can at least point you in the right direction.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for calling. Have a good weekend.
Yeah, you too.
We've not only come to the end of 2+ hours of the study group, 1+ hours of the after show, but you can probably see I've been trying to get a cold, and my throat has held out pretty darn well all the way to the end. I'm not going to be singing today, however, which is good, I think, for everybody. I think the picture of the raccoon was on the pre-show. So for those in the chat that have sent me notes about seeing the raccoon, he's out there. I'll have to tweet him later today. So it's a good reason to follow me on Twitter so that you can see a raccoon. Thanks everyone for joining us today. Thanks for that went up a little too quick. Thanks for calling in. Thanks for being on the study group. We'll have the replays out, and I'll send an update when those are available as well. We'll have another one of these next month, or join us next week. On a week from today, we have our Network Plus study group. Maybe we'll see you then as well. And thanks for joining us. See you next time on the study group, everyone.